Good evening. We're going to get into the study of Hannah and the passage we looked at on Sunday in just a second. But I just want to remind you we're on a series looking at peopling prayer. And we've already looked at the story of Daniel and this question, where are you, God? You made a promise. Why aren't you answering that? And yet a big prayer from Daniel, of course, as he deals with sin in the life of the nation and in his life too. And then we looked at Jacob. And we looked at this sort of question, I haven't done very much to do with you, God, right up to now. But if you're there, would you work in my life? Would you answer my prayer? And then this week and next week, we're looking at the issue of pain. Where are you, God, when things around me just seems to be falling apart, whether it's personal or something that involves our family as well. So that's where we're looking. You're going to be reading in 1 Samuel. We'll read the passage again in our groups in just a short while. But I just wanted to bring out a couple of things that we mentioned on Sunday. One is that what Hannah was going through was quite a common problem. And yet some of the most intense pain of the fact that she could not have a child or did not seem to be having a child, the intense pain came because of the mocking of her rival wife, if you like, Peninnah. It came at a time where the people of God went up to Shiloh, the place of worship, God's place of worship. And it must have been such a very difficult time for her as she looked at her Peninnah with her children, and yet she did not have any. And so Hannah's plight is touching, and yet when you think of the bigger picture, you think to yourself, well, why has God put this in? And I think we can learn that brilliant lesson. There's a God who is concerned with the intimate details, the most intimate details of our lives. The God of the lilies and the sparrows, who sees each sparrow that falls, who knows the hairs of our head. And so we can turn to God with the most detailed and most personal things within our life. I want you to look in your groups also at how the Psalms are written as such a real prayer from people, and particularly David and Asaph. And I want us to think of prayers in three ways. One is it's a time of orientation where things seem to be going really good within our lives. And there's so much of praise and thanksgiving there. But there's times when things seem to go wrong and seem disorientated, which seems a very mild word for some of the stuff that goes on in our lives. And we're crying, God, how long? Why? And then God wants to bring us to that sense of a new orientation within our lives where we can look back and we can see, and in some senses, not to trivialize Hannah's struggle and pain, but just that pain that, as I said on Sunday, that same pain that produced a Samuel to transform in Israel, also produced a transformation within Hannah's heart as well. I quoted something on Sunday, and maybe you'll look at this as well. Hannah was not a pawn in God's historical chess game. God's purposes for Hannah might have involved pain, but his larger purpose for Israel was linked with a loving purpose for Hannah, and he gently leads her through that suffering. And so we discovered on Sunday that prayer is about answering God, bringing to God, out of all the difficulties and struggles within our lives, bringing to God how we feel. We answer God by our cries of, God, how long? Or in Hannah's case, the grief and pain that was in her heart. We thought about how prayer has transformed and should transform our lives. And then we wanted to think too that out of all that's going on, let's not forget there is a bigger picture. Yes, we will look back on these things in our lives one day and give God thanks. It's hard when we're going through it. It does not seem to help sometimes when people say that to us. But it is hard. But we will look because God has a bigger story. And one of the things I want you to do again in your groups is to listen again to that video from Matt Chandler and think about this sense, that God's story still goes on. God's story, when our lives end, God's story will still go on. It's not to say our lives are insignificant, but it's to say that God has a plan that is not limited to just me and you, but it is a greater, bigger plan, and God always has his man and his woman, and always has his person wherever we are, and God will take on his message of God, the gospel and peace forward. Have a great time tonight. God bless.